Sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin,
President of
verehrte
the
Kolleginnen und Kollegen,
Bundestag, colleagues,
liebe Mitbürgerinnen und Mitbürger.
compatriots.
Der 24.
The 24th of February 2022 marked a change in the history of our continent. In attacking Ukraine, the Russian President Putin launched a war of aggression cold-bloodedly for one reason: to stop the freedom of Ukraine and put it under its yoke. This goes against humanity, this goes against international law, and there's nothing whatever that could justify this attack. The terrible images we have been seeing from Kiev, Odessa, and Mariupol show the unscrupulousness of Putin, the shocking injustice, the pain of Ukrainians all touch us very deeply. I know exactly what our fellow countrymen and women are asking themselves in the evenings, what concerns they have looking at what they're finding out from this war. Many remember our grandparents or great-grandparents talking about the war, and for younger people, it's impossible to imagine. How can there be a war in Europe now? Many of you have been expressing this outrage in Berlin. We have experienced a break in everything we have known until now, and that means that the world before this attack is not the same as the world before it. Essentially, it's about the question of whether might can break laws, whether we can allow Putin to turn back the clock to the time of imperial powers of the 19th century, or whether we can draw a line in the sand and contain this. This requires strength on our part. Yes, we want to show him clear boundaries, and yes, we want to defend our democracy, our freedom, and our prosperity. And I'm grateful to you, President of the Bundestag, for convening this special session. And I'm glad that I'm able to speak to all of you, and I want to thank all of the leaders of the parliamentary groups of all the different parties for supporting the convening of this special session of the Bundestag. Ladies and gentlemen, in attacking Ukraine, Putin doesn't just want to eradicate a country from the world map. He is destroying the European security structure that we have had since the final act of Helsinki for nearly half a century. And in doing so, he is putting himself outside of the international community. Worldwide, we have worked with France to try to get the UN Security Council to name Russia's attack as what it is, namely an infamous break of international law and order. And I believe we have some success. What we have seen is that we are not alone in defending peace, and we will continue to work towards achieving this. And I'm very grateful to German Foreign Minister Baerbock for what she has achieved thus far as well in this regard. It was only by using the emergency brake of veto, a permanent member of the Security Council, that they could prevent this. That in itself is an outrage. President Putin keeps talking about inviolable security, but what he's actually doing is using weapons to try to bring part of the continent under his power. And this will have an impact on the rest of Europe as well. Permanent security in Europe is not possible with Russia there. Putin is endangering this. and we need to not mince our words. We are tackling the challenge that these times have made of us with a cool head, resolutely. There are 5 approaches that we want to take. Firstly, we need to support Ukraine in its hour of desperate need. And in recent weeks and months, we have done this as much as we can. But with the attack on Ukraine, we find ourselves in a new age. In Kiev, in Kharkiv, Odessa, Mariupol, people are not just defending their homeland, they are fighting for liberty and democracy, for values that we share with them. As Democrats, as Europeans, we stand with you. We stand on the right side of history with you. On Thursday, President Putin, in attacking Ukraine, created a new reality. And this new reality requires a clear response. We have given this clear response. As you know, yesterday we decided that Germany will deliver weapons to Ukraine so it can defend itself. There was no other response possible to Putin's aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, our second mandate is to get Putin away from this path of warring on Ukraine. It is a disaster for Ukraine, but it will prove to be a disaster for Russia too. Together with the heads of state and government of the EU, we have approved a raft of sanctions that are unprecedented. We are cutting Russian banks, and we are taking the oligarchs' money away from them, or we're focusing on where we can do that, and there will be sanctions placed on Putin and all of those close to him when it comes to visas for members of the government. And we are excluding important Russian banks from SWIFT, from the SWIFT system. We decided on this yesterday, and we are going to take this significant step. Let's not kid ourselves for a minute, though. Putin will not change his course overnight. But hopefully, very soon, the Russian leadership will feel what high price they will have to pay for this. In recent weeks, there's been a 30% plummeting on the Russian stock markets, and that shows that our sanctions are working, and we are perfectly happy to consider any other kind of sanction that we may put in place, and everything is on the table. The question remains as to what will hurt those responsible most, the ones who are to blame, and not the Russian people. Because it was Putin who chose this war, not the people of Russia, and this is why we must say very clearly that this war is Putin's war. And it's important for me to differentiate here, because the reconciliation between Germany and Russia remains an important chapter of our post-war history. And I know how hard the current situation is to bear for all of those fellow countrymen in Germany who were born in Russia or born in Ukraine. And we will not allow this conflict between Putin and the free world to tear open old wounds and cause new problems. And there's another thing we mustn't forget. In many Russian cities, plenty of citizens demonstrated against Putin's wars, risking arrest and risking physical harm to themselves. That took a great deal of courage, and we respect this. Germany stands today with Ukraine. Our thoughts and our sympathies lie with the victims of the Russian war of aggression. And we also support everyone in Russia who are countering the powerful regime of Putin and rejecting its war. And we know you are many in Russia. And I say to all of you, do not give up. I am certain that liberty, tolerance, and human rights will prevail in Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, the third major challenge we have is preventing Putin's war infecting other countries in Europe. And that means, without any ifs, ands, and buts, we are completely committed to the Mutual Defense Clause and our collective security guarantee in NATO. And I assured this to those in Eastern Europe who worry about their own security. President Putin must not underestimate our resoluteness. We will defend the NATO territory on the basis of our collective security guarantee, inch for inch. And we mean this absolutely certainty. In taking a country into Ukraine, the will that we have as an alliance is to defend this country as we would defend ourselves. The German Armed Forces has already expanded its support for the Eastern European NATO partners, and for this important signal, I want to thank the German Ministry of Defense. In Lithuania, where we are leading the response task, we have increased our troops, and in Romania, we have expanded our air policing troop as well. We want to set up a new task force in Slovakia. Our Navy is helping with additional ships when it comes to ensuring and policing the North Sea and the Mediterranean. And we are prepared to be involved with air forces in defending the airspace near the Russian border and above the Eastern European countries. Our soldiers are men and women who have not had much time to prepare for these operations. Let me say, on behalf of all of you here, I'm sure, thank you. Thank you for your important service in these dark days. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the change that Putin's attack means for us, let me say, it heralds a new age, and what needs to be done to keep the peace will be done, and Germany will do its bit. Let me say that clearly. But it's not enough just to say it, because for that, the German armed forces need new, strong capabilities. And this is my fourth issue that I wish to speak about now. This is the fourth thing I wish to speak to you about today. If you read the decrees that distort history that Putin has written, if you look at his statement that he made in TV describing his attack, and that, although I had just spoken to Putin for hours, anyone who has read what Putin says can have no doubt that Putin wants to create a Russian empire. He wants to recreate the order within Europe, and he has no fear of using military might to achieve it. And we're seeing this in Ukraine today. So we have to ask ourselves, what capabilities does Putin's Russia have, and what capabilities do we need in order to counter this threat today and in the future? One thing is for sure. We need to invest considerably more in the security of our country in order to defend our liberty and our democracy in this way as well. This is a major challenge for the entire country. It means to have a modern, progressive German armed forces, Bundeswehr, that can protect us. In the Munich Security Conference a week ago, I said we need aircraft, we need ships, and we need soldiers who are well equipped, ideally equipped for their missions. That's what it's about. And this can be done for a country as big as we are, as important as we are in Europe. But let's not kid ourselves. Better equipment, more personnel, all of this costs a lot of money. And for that, we will set up a special fund for the German armed forces, and I'm grateful to German Finance Minister Lindner for his support in this. The 2022 German budget will have 100 billion euros earmarked for this as a one-off, and this money will be used for investment in the German armed forces. From now on, year for year, more than 2% of our GDP will be invested in defense. And, ladies and gentlemen, and I am addressing all parliamentary groups of the German Bundestag, let us approve this in our basic law. Something I would like to add at this point is we are not just aspiring to this goal because we have committed to this in our allies to increase our defense spending up to 2% of our GDP. We are doing it for ourselves. We are doing it for our own security. Well aware of the fact that it will not be enough just to have the German armed forces to stop the challenges facing us. This is why we also need to invest in development. And this is why we also need to strengthen our resilience technically and socially in order to be more resilient against cyber attacks on our communication systems. And we will need to keep up technologically as well, which is why it's so important for me that the fighter planes and tanks that are being developed need to be developed with our European partners, particularly with France. We need to build them here in Europe. These projects are now top priority for us. Until the new aircraft get off the ground, we will continue to develop the new Eurofighter together. It's also good that the Euro drone contracts were signed this week. The procurement of the armed drones from Israel is something we are working on as well. And for nuclear participation, we will need a modern replacement for the obsolete Tornado jets. The Eurofighter is going to have electronic warfare capacity, and after that, we will consider further options as carriers. And we will need to do more in the future in order to ensure a reliable energy supply for our country in the future. One important measure for this is something the German government has already done, and we will have to reposition to get rid of our dependency on individual energy exporters. The events of recent days and weeks have shown us that a responsible energy policy looking to the future isn't just something that's important for our economy and for our environment. It is also decisive for our security. And this is why the faster we can expand renewable energies, the better it is. And we have set the right course as an industrial country. Until 2045, we want to become a zero-carbon industry. And with this aim ahead, there are important decisions that we will have to take. For example, building up a coal and gas reserve. We have decided that the storage long-term options for gas have to be increased to 200 billion cubic meters, and we will have to buy additional natural gas reserves on the market. And we've decided to have 2 LNG reserves and to build them in as soon as we can. The German economics minister, Habeck, I want to thank very much for all of his efforts. What was necessary in short term can be connected to what we needed long term anyway to achieve a successful transformation. An LNG terminal where natural gas comes to today can take on green hydrogen tomorrow. And naturally, the high energy prices are things we need to look at. Putin's war has hiked up these prices, and that's why this week we've put together a package to ease this burden. We have increased we've got a heating support for low earners and for pensioners, and we will be looking at how to ease this burden on our citizens. Our message is clear. The citizens and the companies in this country will not be left alone in this difficult time. Ladies and gentlemen, the change that Putin has undertaken doesn't just affect our country, it affects Europe as a whole. And this means there are opportunities and challenges. The challenge is to sustainably strengthen the sovereignty of the European Union. The opportunity is that we can join forces in a way that we have shown we are able to do. See, for example, the package of sanctions. For Germany and for all other EU member states, this means not just asking what we can get out of Brussels for our own country, but to ask what is the best decision for the European Union. Europe is our foundation, and only if we understand that will we be able to tackle the challenges facing us. And this brings me to my final point, the fifth one. Putin's war means a break for our foreign policy as well. As much diplomacy as possible without being naive, this aspiration remains. Not being naive, however, also means not speaking just for the sake of doing it. For a true dialogue, there needs to be a willingness on both sides. And there is no willingness on Putin's side. And it's not just been the last few weeks and days that this has been the case. And what does this mean for the future? We will not refuse to speak to Russia, not even in this extreme situation. It remains the job of politicians to keep diplomatic channels open. Anything else would be irresponsible. Ladies and gentlemen, we know what we support based on our own history, what we want. We want peace in Europe. We will never accept violence as a means of policy making. We will always push for a peaceful solution of conflicts, and we will work until there is peace in Europe once again. And we are not alone in this. We are working with our friends and partners in Europe and across the globe. Our greatest strength are our alliances. We owe it to them that for over 30 years we have been a unified Germany living in prosperity and peace with our neighbors. If we want these last 30 years not to be a historic exception, we must do everything we can to work towards cohesion within the EU, the strength of NATO, and closer contacts to those who share our values worldwide. I am optimistic that we will succeed, because rarely were we so resolute with our partners as we are today. We know how strong free democracies can be. We know what really can survive in these times. And this is why I want to thank you and all of the parliamentary groups in this parliament who have clearly condemned this Russian attack on Ukraine as what it is, an attack on a country, a war of aggression that is not justified by anything. And I think our motion today makes that very, very clear. And I want to thank all of you who have shown clearly that they are against Putin's war, here in Berlin and elsewhere, who have demonstrated against it. And I want to thank everyone who, in these times, support us for a free, open, just, peaceful Europe. We will defend it.